From a flightless simulator at Ferris Air to a momentous meeting in an alley, to the complex mind of an architect, to every far sector in space, and to the brilliance of the central power battery on Oa. This is the podcast that covers the adventures of all of your favorite ring slingers. This is the Emerald Echo with your hosts, Adam and the Emerald Enthusiast.
Welcome to another episode of Emerald Echo, a Green Lantern podcast and vidcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, the Emerald Enthusiast himself, Donnie. Donnie, how's it going?
What's up, Lantern fans? It's the man whose ring runs on fanboy energy. It is the Emerald Enthusiast, and we're back with another episode of the Emerald Echo.
It's always good to speak to you, sir, especially when we're talking Green Lantern, which we're discussing today. So there is some interesting news, good news to bring to our viewers and listeners today, Donnie. Not unexpected news, but I think it's the next step in us getting closer to seeing the more of the DCU live action Green Lantern mythology unfold. As we know and are eagerly awaiting a first look at, we have Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner in Superman coming in 2025. Lord knows there have been a lot of set pictures from that film popping up online, which I will share my thoughts on in an upcoming Krypton's Legacy episode with Nick Zednick, so stay tuned for that. But needless to say, I'm very excited for the characters we have seen. We haven't seen Guy Gardner as of yet because Nathan Fillion is basically going back and forth between the Rookie set, which he's filming his show, and the Superman set, it would seem. So whether he's filmed all his stuff indoors in a studio, and that's why we haven't seen a look at him yet, is probably the case. But still awaiting that first look. But as we know, we are getting more Green Lanterns in the DCU in the form of the live-action series Lanterns, and over recently that has gotten the official green light from the studio. So we have basically, it's confirmed that Lanterns has been ordered directly to series. So what that means is typically what happens when a network or a streamer orders a series, they order a pilot first, and then they'll screen the pilot, they'll do some internal testing, and then based off of those results, they'll discover whether audiences are into that and whether it seems like something that they should pour more money in to make a whole series. Lanterns has foregone that process and is getting a series commitment from the get-go. Basically, one of the interesting things about this is that we had previously been told that when it was first announced as part of the DC slate from James Gunn, that it would be a Max series, so it would be on the streaming service Max.
Right.
They've changed the strategy on that, so that it will now be an HBO original. So what's going to happen is that it will air first on HBO, and then, from what I understand, that same evening, after it airs on HBO, it will then be uploaded, streamed on Max, so you can watch it on Max. So it's a day and date with HBO and Max. What that means, to me at least, is because it's been upgraded to an HBO Max or HBO Max, HBO original. Excuse me.
Right.
That Warner Brothers, can't you keep the name of that thing straight so we can all get
Well, it's a little confusing because for years we had HBO and Cinemax, which was referred to as Max, and so I still get confused sometimes when I hear the two combined as one thing.
So what it means to me, for Lanterns being an original HBO original, is that I think there's going to be a little bit even more money put into it because HBO as a brand, as a network, has a prestige. There's a prestige factor there.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that distinction only as a good thing for the series. Further things that we do know is that even though James Gunn previously confirmed the creative team, it's further confirmed here. So basically, we have Chris Mundy from True Detective, Night Country, and Ozark serving as the showrunner and executive producer. We have Damon Lindelof of Watchmen, The Leftovers, and Lost fame, and Tom King from Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, the comic, and Mr. Miracle, the comic, and his Batman run, and a whole host of other comics are serving.
Well, yeah, obviously, I mean, anyone should know Tom King's name if you are at all familiar with DC Comics, you know that name. So
they are serving as executive producers, and will co-write or are co-writing Lanterns with Chris Mundy. So now we have the creative team officially confirmed. Then we have more news that we are going to be, the focus of the show is going to be on Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. Now, that doesn't mean that they're the only two Lanterns we'll see in the show, but they will be the main protagonists of the series.
Mm-hmm.
It's confirmed, I think, Variety, mentioned this blurb, that Hal Jordan will be the veteran Green Lantern officer, and Jon Stewart will be the rookie officer.
Yeah. Which is more reflective of where they were originally. You know, the ages of a lot of comic book characters are kept kind of in the dark because they're not important, and it also it makes continuity more difficult. But in recent decades, it's been more portrayed that John's a little older than Hal, whereas originally Hal was definitely older than John.
And I think that's a function of the parallax stuff and the rebirth and all that continuity jazz that kind of, but you're right, this is more reflective of how things were. And in terms of the age range, I'm perfectly fine with that setup of Hal being the senior officer and John being the rookie. Especially because I have theories on what might be going on, which I'll get into in a minute, in terms of my speculation. I'll put the tinfoil hat on and speculate in a second. So we have Hal and John, and we know it's going to be. It's an 8-episode series, which is pretty standard for streaming fare nowadays. So that's nothing. And look, we were never going to get. This wasn't going to be like a standard network show where you're going to get a 23-episode season. That's not the way streaming does things anymore. The typical streaming formula is 6 to 13 episodes, right?
And plus, this could still be expensive. I mean, I know they're not going to go as expensive as, like, let's say something like The Acolyte, obviously.
Right.
But this is still going to be
I've heard rumors that we're getting essentially. Now, again, this number could be, total BS, but from what I've gathered, we're looking at $15 million an episode, which is a nice hefty.
Which is great, but like you said, I mean, that's why we're not going to get an initial round of 15 or 20 episodes, because that's a lot of money still.
Yeah. Well, if you average it out, 15 times 8, what is that?
15 times 8 is 120. So I'm going to take that view because I'm tired. And I was like, 15 times 8. I'm like, don't make me do math now.
Well, listen, regardless, I mean, that's essentially the budget of a movie, right? For the whole series, which makes sense. So it's going to look good. Now, so we got 8 episodes. And also, you know what, the 8 episode sort of length, I think, is a good thing because they don't have time for filler episodes. Which is great. Let's cut the filler. Like, you know, a lot of the Flash, Arrow, Supergirl, as much as I love the CW verse, there were a lot of filler episodes where if I had known what they were going to be, I would have skipped them, right? Like, that's the advantage of owning a series like that, because you know when the garbage episodes are coming, and you can skip them, right? Like, I've done it on several rewatches of Smallville, where I know what episode is going to be crap, so I skip it. The vampire episode, you know, the one where Pete turns into Mr. Fantastic and starts stretching, all that nonsense. You know, those are the kinds I skip. But I digress. So there's no time for filler. Now, another thing that I want to mention, then I'll get your thoughts on all this, is I know there's some consternation and hand-wringing in the fandom about it being, you know, a terrestrial-based mystery. Right now that Hal and John are going to have to solve. All I'm taking that to mean is that we're not going to be hopping from one planet to the next to the next to the next. Given that this is still Green Lanterns, there's going to have to be some explanation of Oa, right? Because they're going to. I mean, I don't think they're going to blanketly assume that everybody knows what a Green Lantern is. Let's go, right? I think they're going to give some. So we're going to get some Oa, right? Which is, and just because whatever they're looking for, the mystery, the murder, whatever they're uncovering, is on Earth, doesn't mean the threat cannot be alien in nature. That's what we have to keep in mind. So all I think the terrestrial terminology means is that we're not going to be hopping from, you know, from Oa to Thanagar to, you know, Krypton 20 years in the past, 200 years in the past, et cetera, et cetera. You pick a DC planet and you know, whatever, insert it here. I just think we're going to see some Oa, and then they're going to be solving this mystery that takes place on Earth. Yeah. I have theories on what that could be, and I'll get to them in a second. Of everything I've thrown at you so far, what are your thoughts before I get into my
well,
mystery?
Okay, 2 things. Number one, if it's 8 episodes, I don't think we need to jump to space right away. Now, I'm going to agree with everybody that you absolutely cannot separate Green Lantern from space. Right. If this becomes a 2, 3, 4, 5 season show, then yes, they need to spend more time in space. But right, you know, the thing that this show will need to do right away is establish who Hal Jordan is and who John Stewart is, what they mean to one another, what the Green Lantern ring is, because we can't just assume that everybody knows, and we can't just assume that everybody who's watching the show watched the 2011 movie or one of the animated movies.
Clearly that's not the case because of the box office, but yeah.
Although it was #1 for at one point on Netflix.
And I like the movie, so I'm not knocking it.
I think people have retroactively looked at it and said, nobody's saying it's a masterpiece, but people have looked at it in hindsight and said, you know what, it's not that bad. We didn't go out at the time to get to see it, but it's not that bad.
Spoiler alert, it's better than all 3 Ant-Man movies, and in my opinion, all 4 Thor movies, but what do I know? Carry on.
And what my other point, and again, some people are going to roll their eyes at me when I say this, but I'm still a little gun shy, and I think it's great that we're getting these updates because it does increase my optimism, but I'm still in kind of a wait and see mode to see where everything goes because I've had the rug pulled out from under me too many times.
Yeah, no, I get that, but at this point, the fact that it's given the green light, like it's been given a full series order, which none of the other permutations of this project have ever gotten. Like they've never gotten the official stamp of we're going. Mm-hmm. It's like you know when Nicolas Cage was cast as Superman, Sure, he was cast. They were preparing, but they never got the official stamp of approval. Same with...
So this is what I'll say too. When this show is in the stage where Superman Legacy is now,
filming.
then I'll be then I will be at ease.
No, yeah. Well, but all I'm saying is the other permutations of the show before this, under this leadership, never actually got to the series order stage.
Sure.
Yes, sure. Finn, whatever his name is, was cast. Whitrock, whatever his name is.
Yes, Finn Whitrock. Yeah.
But Noah Centineo was cast as He-Man, but it never got the green light. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So there's that. And oddly enough, we're talking about Green Lantern and green lights. Until you get a green light on something, it can be in production. Great, cool. The intent is to, when it's in production, or what's the terminology I'm thinking of? In development. When it's in development, sure, you can cast. You can write an episode Bible, but until you have the green light, anything can happen. Mm-hmm. It's only when you have the green light where basically what this green light means to me is that at the very minimum, the first episode is written, if not more. I think more, if you ask me. Everybody involved, be it James Gunn, Peter Safran, the head of HBO, they've all looked at it and said, okay, we're comfortable with this, we're happy with it, we're going. This is, I think, the furthest along we've ever gotten with a Green Lantern project besides the 2011 movie, which obviously came to be. So, and plus, the reason why I'm more confident this time around is because we do have new leadership in the form of James Gunn and Peter Safran. Right.
And I'll, full disclosure, part of my hesitation here was because, again, we had what wasn't the Batgirl movie like almost finished and they shelved it. Now, that's different leadership, and I get that, but Warner Brothers Discovery there's been so much chaos in the past that I think you could understand that I have a little bit of hesitation here.
No, I totally get that. I'm not arguing your hesitation. I just think you have to understand that Batgirl was the product of a different regime.
Right. And I understand that, yeah.
So if I'm David Zaslav coming in and saying, okay, what do I need to, what am I saving money on? It's the thing that I think green light, right? But the benefit of this DC Studios is that it seems like David Zaslav is like, we're now talking about DC Studios. So Zaslav has handed over the reins to James Gunn and Safran and say, if you think this is the right thing to green light, go for it. And when you need me to sign off on something, call me. Like, of course, for example, they have to show them the screen tests of, the Superman and Lois actor, Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner. Those things they have to show him because obviously, but from everything I've seen James Gunn tweet, it's almost like that's a formality. Right? It's like we're showing him because we kind of that's the nature of the beast. But he's given the say to Safran and Gunn, so it's a totally different sort of setup than DC has ever had before. But now to go to my theories. When I said just because the main location of the show is terrestrial on Earth, I think we're looking at potential because James Gunn recently, even in talking about the green light, when he announced the green light, he described the Lanterns show as a foundational piece to the story they're building across the whole DCU, meaning the villain or villains could carry over further to a large, let's say, a Justice League thing or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking two possibilities with the villain here, and I could be totally wrong. Given that Hal is the senior Green Lantern officer? Could the threat that is causing whatever murder mystery they're looking into be Parallax? And then...
Sure.
Or the other name I thought of was Black Hand.
There are a lot of Green Lantern villains that are more terrestrial or at least could be used in a terrestrial manner.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, right away, I'm thinking, Dr. Polaris, Sonar, there's a number of ways they could go. And, the Shark, there's plenty of ways that they can go that don't necessarily involve going right to, the Sinestro Corps or Parallax or something like that. They have plenty of options. There is so much to draw from with the Green Lantern mythos. I don't think that's going to be the problem.
Yeah. No, but those were two that I thought of that they could still be alien in nature, but involve being terrestrial at the same time. Sure. And there's something in me that says James Gunn from a
there's
creative
something in you. Well, just make sure when you fart that you. Anyway,
no, not. I won't turn into a Brown Lantern anytime soon. But no, something tells me, given James Gunn's kind of repertoire and what I've seen from him, that he would want to build to something like, why am I blanking now? Black Hand, come on.
Blackest Night?
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, yes.
Like that story and James Gunn's sensibilities, I could definitely see that vibing. So, having Black Hand sort of lay some groundwork for that makes some sense to me. And again, the reason I thought of Parallax is because, well, if Hal is the sort of senior officer, I mean, it lends itself to Parallax being introduced and eventually getting to the, infecting Hal and all that jazz. So,
as long as they do it the right way this time and not like they did it in the movie, I'm okay with that.
And again, I think, like I said, if you ask me in terms of handling a comic book property, who do I have more faith in, James Gunn or Martin Campbell? My answer is James Gunn.
Okay.
Every single time. Just because, look.
But, let me throw out, too, there are a lot of kind of more terrestrial villains that could have a connection to a cosmic, some kind of like cosmic race or something. Like, who says that they have to draw from Hal and John's villains? They could draw from, like, Effigy, who's a Kyle villain, but at the same time has a cosmic connection.
Yeah.
Or they could draw like directly from the Jeremy Adams run and say, hey, that there's some Manhunter armor somewhere on Earth.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what they end up investigating.
Which would also tie into the Earth One, the imagery that they're using with the Manhunters, right? That could be a thing, right? So there's so many possibilities that, just because they say it's a terrestrial-based story, it doesn't mean that Hal and John are going to be stopping grocery store robberies for 8 episodes. Which when I see some reactions online, that's the kind of ridiculousness people are going towards. It's like they're not going to be stopping grocery theft, stealing some library books. Like, this is not what we're talking about here. Like, so it's like, let's use
like that time on Super Friends that they needed the whole Justice League to investigate the fact that there was a series of encyclopedias missing.
Right. So let's use a little bit of our common sense. Like, terrestrial can literally just means, listen, we're not going to be planet hopping. That's what they're basically telling you.
At least not yet. Again, I think there needs to be some proving ground here that Green Lantern is going to be a property that brings in viewership.
And again, maybe if this series does well, maybe this leads to transitioning to movies where they do, the Sinestro Corps War, where they do the bigger things, So, but again, I think it's smart to start off on an HBO series to sort of refresh Green Lantern in the viewing public's minds.
Right.
Whereas
And who's to say this could, if this is successful, that it can't spin off into something more space based? Maybe we get this is successful, and we spin off into Far Sector, and then John and Hal go and meet up with Joe.
And there's always a possibility that because we've now got Hal, John, and Guy, right? We have 3 Lanterns confirmed existing in the DCU. Who's to say we don't get Kyle? There's the possibility that he can show up here at some point. Right?
If this show is successful and it goes into multiple seasons, I can guarantee you we'll see Kyle if that situation arises.
And if Hal eventually succumbs to Parallax, Kyle's going to be on the way. So, right. But the best part of this whole scenario so far for me is James Gunn, in quotes, saying that Green Lantern is a fundamental pillar of what they're doing with the grander DC universe. This, as a Green Lantern fan, is what I want to hear. I don't want to hear that, Green Lantern is an afterthought, that I'm going to shoot for a special version of my movie in my backyard with an actor that wasn't sanctioned by the studio.
Right.
Like, this is a much better situation than that. As a Green Lantern fan, this is what I want. Yeah. Not, that's all. Who am I going to use for my cut? Just throw Green Lantern in there. Green Lantern should be at the forefront of the DC Universe and a Justice League from the get-go. And I'm glad James Gunn vibes with me in terms of that sensibility. So that's the thing I take heart in. And look at the creative team they've assembled. Okay, no disrespect to Martin Campbell and Michael Green or whoever the hell wrote the movie, the 45 people that wrote the movie, because there were 45 writers. This creative team that they've assembled for this show, it's almost impossible to put a better roster of creative people together for a show. That's encouraging. Very encouraging. So,
and like I said, I do like the fact that I'm getting regular updates and there seems to be progression because each one makes me feel a little bit better about this project.
And just look at it as well. Like look at where we are. We've got Creature Commandos in post-production. That's coming in, I think, December. We've got Peacemaker filming, season 2. We've got Superman filming. We've got Supergirl in pre-production, about to start filming as soon as Superman wraps. We have a Blue Beetle animated series announced that's going to continue the film and also transition him into the DCU. And now we've got Lanterns getting a green light. Also, the head of HBO, Casey Bloys, described it as the first live-action DCU series. Now, so I'm wondering if this somehow comes out before Peacemaker.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because I can guarantee you, to me, the next step for this show will be casting. Okay. Because I'm pretty sure the fact that it's got the green light means everybody at the studio levels has seen multiple scripts for a few of the episodes. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given the green light until they had seen that.
Right.
And, so the next step...
the other thing to think about this, being that this is going to be like a buddy cop investigative show, if they want to launch the Flash out of this, somehow they could do that. It would make sense that Barry Allen would be like inhabiting the same types of circles.
Yeah, we need the Flash rebooting ASAP.
We're obviously not going to get what we had before.
In terms of the actor, and I say thank God for that, because I still enjoyed the movie. I rewatched it the other day.
I'd be fine with Grant Gustin coming back. I don't think he wants to.
He did say he'd do it for James Gunn if James Gunn asked. So there's that.
I'm fine with that.
Listen, I'll take a wooden stick dressed in the Flash costume over Ezra Miller personally, but that's just me. But again, I think so. From my perspective, I think we're going to hear about casting as the next step in this process.
Okay.
And I don't think it's going to be that far away. I could see it coming.
It would be nice if we would get it before the end of the summer.
I would think by my timeline, and again, James Gunn doesn't tell me anything. I wish he would, but because I have a lot of questions, especially Batman related. But my guesstimation, because that's what it is that by the end of this calendar year, we're going to have
guesstimation. Listen to that portmanteau.
Is that by the end of the calendar year of this year, we're going to have our Hal Jordan and John Stewart. That's my thought process. So, and of course, when that news comes down, Donnie and I will get on this show and share our thoughts about it with you. But that's the news. Pretty big news. So, Lansing fans start getting excited because things are rolling. Things are starting to roll. Things are starting to move. So let's get excited. But that's the news. What we'll do is we'll take a break and we're going to get back to revisiting the adventures of Kyle Rayner.
Kyle Rayner, yes.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows, which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back.
We're both back. Really. You know why I said it? Because when you're not here, I have to say it. So that's what happens. So, but anyway, we're both back, and
right.
And
it's like Roman and Solo vying for the Ulafala.
But as promised, we're going to go back to what we started way back when, and chronicling the adventures of Kyle Rayner. The reason why we haven't done this in so long is
it's been about a year.
Yeah, and the reason why is because we now have, or we had, 3 Green Lantern comics.
Yes.
Concurrently, so we have to stay on top of those.
Yeah, so it's not a bad thing that we've had so much good material to talk about that we kind of got sidetracked. But
exactly. So that's why we haven't done it in a while. But here we are back at it. So where were we when we left off with Kyle, Donnie?
Well, we're going to start with Damage number 13. And when I say Damage, I'm talking about Grant Emerson. This is volume 1, cover date of June 1995.
So just to be clear, we're not talking about the tattoo on Jared Leto's head.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. We're talking, again, 1995. Kyle was in and out of various titles back then, including Teen Titans and Damage, which we covered in the crossover from the last episode that we recorded, of course, being the crossover with the other podcast, The Siege of Z Sharam. And now we're going back to a very similar place, although this issue takes place before the issue that we talked about in that crossover.
Okay.
So this is entitled Picking Up the Pieces, Chapter 1. And it's interesting because it starts with Damage in a training drill against all of the Titans and Green Lantern. Also Supergirl, and when I say Supergirl, I mean the Matrix version that we talked about in the crossover. This is the 90s version, who was a shape-shifting alien. And so he's in this drill against them, and you can see Damage's power level at this point. One of the things he does is we know how strong he is, but he manages to kick Impulse during this drill. So he can move at a very quick speed, and he overwhelms a lot of the Titans And Kyle makes a construct. He's kind of this giant gorilla-like monster and puts Grant in a bear hug from behind, underestimates his power, and Damage grabs him and throws him into Donna Troy. So this issue, we can see, and we'll talk more about this with the subsequent issues that we're going to cover. Kyle is still feeling out the ring at this point. Again, we're talking about a year or so after he got the ring. He still doesn't know all of its facets, and he underestimates an opponent, and he pays for it in this drill.
And I do love the fact that almost a year into Kyle's sort of tenure as Green Lantern, he's still in that feeling out process. I think that's very important, because the tendency would be, all right, 2-3 issues, and then he'll be a master at the ring slinging. Like, for example, if this was an episode of the Arrow TV series, he'd be an expert with, like Roy came into that show, and within 2 episodes could fire a bow almost as good as Oliver. And while watching, I'm like, that's ridiculous. But so, I mean, I'm glad that this comic is taking their time and having Kyle grow into the ring and develop and hone his skill, right?
Yeah. So let me clarify for anyone who may have missed the last episode. When I say the Titans, I mean the new Titans: Arsenal, Donna Troy, of course, Kyle working with them, Impulse, Supergirl, again, the Matrix version of Supergirl, and Terra. And those are the characters that we see in this. And what's really important here, even though Kyle, it's not the most constructs that you're going to see him make, certainly not the most complicated constructs, but we do see him grow emotionally as this issue goes on. And I'll talk more about that as we get towards the end here. But we see that Kyle uses his experience of grief to help Damage out. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. So, all right. So after the training drill, Damage kind of storms off. Again, at this point, he's kind of a wild card in the group. And we see that from some of his appearances that we've talked about here on this podcast, that he's hot-headed. Again, he's very young. And at this point, he is dealing with something too that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But he goes to sleep, goes back to his apartment, goes to sleep, and he has a dream where he meets his future self.
Always interesting.
Yeah. And as far as I know, that storyline never really got to resolve because, again, a lot of these comic series at the time kind of ended prematurely. We were talking about that with the Titans earlier, how after the siege of Z-Sharam, that only lasted a few more issues.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, but
yeah.
But I often have dreams about meeting my future self. And then I ask him, well, have the Leafs won the Stanley Cup yet? And when he replies, no, I wake up in a sweat of anger. But that's neither here nor there.
Okay, so there's an interesting panel in the first act of this comic where Kyle recaps what's going on here, and this all happens between Damage issues 8 through 12. He says the kid took off on his own after Arsenal said no. 2, he lost one of our shuttles. 3, he let Dr. Polaris escape. And 4, he caused more property damage than a troop of Japanese movie monsters doing a kick line. Which I thought was, I really like that last description.
That's a fantastic exposition there. And I like the fact that it's Kyle's the one doing it.
Yeah.
Because he's coming into the book, right?
Right.
Almost as kind of like a new reader would be.
Yeah. The writer on this is Tom Joyner, by the way. So.
Right. Which is kind of a fun coincidence because Kyle's joining in on the fun of the book. So.
Mm-hmm. So then Kyle's next appearance in this is after the dream. He goes and picks Damage up and flies Damage to the state of Georgia. And the reason why that is important is that Damage has been barred from the state of Georgia.
Oh.
But Kyle takes him there for a specific reason. And that is the funeral of Damage's girlfriend, Mandradero. I wanted to make sure that I got that name right because she was killed. If you remember, we covered a villain named Splatter on a previous episode.
Yes.
It's been a while. Okay, Splatter. She was killed by Splatter, but her father blames Damage for her death.
Yeah.
And because he's caused so much damage, he's actually barred from the state of Georgia. However, what Kyle does is Kyle puts him in a construct because Kyle checks out the law, and the law says he cannot step foot in the state of Georgia. Well, being that he's writing on this construct, he goes into the funeral. He goes to the graveside there, and he's writing on this construct.
He's not stepping foot.
So technically his feet actually never hit the ground.
Shows you how smart Kyle is. You see that?
Right. And not only does Kyle find a way to do this, and it doesn't go well because again the father's there. There's a conflict with Damage, but Kyle shares a little about the death of Alexandra DeWitt here, and parallels that with Damage losing his girlfriend Mandra, and so you can see Kyle using that grief in kind of a mature way. So even though this isn't the most Green Lantern that he's ever been in this issue where he's, mastering the ring and he's got, all of these action sequences, you can see him developing as a person here. And I think that's interesting. Whereas kind of the next issue that we're going to talk about, we see him learning a little bit more the hard way at some points about the ring. And then the third issue that we're going to talk about here is one of my favorite Green Lantern issues. So make sure you listen to this whole podcast because I'll talk about that.
And why wouldn't you? Like, aren't we a soothing, duo to kind of whisk your problems away for an hour or two? You should listen to the whole thing. But a couple of takeaways. So when Kyle picks up Damage, to the funeral, one of the thoughts I had was, because I'm a wrestling fan and I listen to a lot of wrestling podcasts, all I could think of in my head when that happened was Jake the Snake driving Andre the Giant around. That would be the equivalent of Kyle picking up Damage. Yeah. Those were the podcast stories I was thinking about. And then, again, I did like the Kyle equating the Alexandra situation to
Mandradero. That's her name.
To that situation. And it's like these two could start a club, like the Dead Girlfriend Society Club, where they just share a beer once a month, and
Yeah, there you go. DGS, the Dead Girlfriend Society. Oh,
yeah,
boy.
where nobody wants to join, but it's unfortunately if you're a superhero, the chances of joining that club are probably high. If your girlfriend is a civilian, now if you're dating Donna Troy, you might have better chance of survival, right? So, so those are two things that I thought of while in those moments.
Mm-hmm. So we see this issue ends with Mandra's father stomping off and saying to Damage, no matter who your friends are, no matter how powerful you are, I will get you, and I'm going to make you pay for this.
Yeah, and it's kind of like that. Kind of reminds me of General Ross from the Hulk, right?
Yeah. It's a very similar type of dynamic
that kind
here.
Of vibe. Yeah.
And of course, Kyle believes him when he tells him about Splatter because Arsenal had told Kyle about this.
Right.
But we see that the two of this issue, the two of them, this issue ends with the two of them at Mandra's graveside, and Kyle, kind of helping Damage through this, and consoling him and letting him know that it is going to get better.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I really like Kyle in this. We see his dynamic flip in a lot of these issues where when he's with the Titans, he's a little bit older, he's a little wiser. When he's in his own book, he interacts with somebody like Alan or somebody from the Justice League. They're older and they're giving him the advice.
It's fun to watch that.
So it's fun to watch him interact with different characters in different ways.
Yeah, depending which group he's on. That's very true.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
And a really powerful exchange here is that maybe my favorite panel from this issue is that the rain is pouring down at the graveside at the funeral here, and Damage looks up with his eyes closed and the rain is pouring on his face, and he says, "And now she's dead and everyone thinks I feel really bad about it, and I do, but it's not enough." Feeling like you just that the grief you feel and what you can do about a situation like this is not enough. And Kyle says it never is. Never will be either. It's something that eventually you learn to live with grief and gradually it diminishes, but it's something that just kind of eats at you at the time and is all consuming.
Which is very true. And even in real life, right? When you go through a loss.
Yeah.
That's how things go. So again, what I like about quotes like that and situations like that is, in the midst of the craziness and the fantasticalness of comic books, they can have those little gem of quotes that you can then relate to the life outside your window, right?
Right, and like I said, this was a very emotional issue, and you got to see Kyle mature a little bit emotionally, not necessarily as a swashbuckling hero, but just as a man who's starting to have these life experiences and learning to share in the experiences of people around him.
Agreed. Yeah.
So very well written.
It's anytime we can progress Kyle's character, both with the ring or with just as a person, I think is a good thing. So good stuff.
Yep. All right, and now we are on to Aquaman number 10, and this is also from 1995. And I really like the cover here with Kyle making that construct to attack Aquaman, and the title, it says "A Little Green at the Gills." Dad joke.
Yeah, I thought of you when I read that caption. Like, it's almost as if Donnie wrote this title.
And what's really funny is that, Finding Nemo would be another 8 years away, but it looks like there's like a school of clownfish, and they look like a bunch of Nemos that are running away from Kyle's like construct of this giant alligator thing. Yeah. So now again, back to the 90s, we're talking about the version of Aquaman that has the hook hand.
I like the hook hand. I always liked the hook hand.
Well, and this was the time too, if I remember correctly, he had the ability to, and maybe he still does this, I don't know, but I haven't seen this in a while. He could dehydrate people by touching them. He could like pull all the water out of them.
See, that's a cool power.
Exactly, yeah. Because we are a significant portion of us as water, so.
Yeah, and also, just going through this book, at least from a visual standpoint, this is the most Jason Momoa Aquaman.
He does resemble,
that you could imagine, right?
Yeah. He's got the big beard and yeah. So the reason why Kyle ends up in this issue is there's a news report that there is a shark attack. And Kyle, there's been multiple shark attacks, and Kyle feels like it's his responsibility to go do something about it as Green Lantern. And funny exchange is that he was like, I'm going to fly off and nobody can stop me. And then he forgets where he's going and has to come back and ask Donna.
I love that because he's like so confident. She's like, you need me to come with you for backup? And he's like, no, I can handle this. I'm Green Lantern. So he takes off, flies out the window.
Yeah,
she's like 3, 2, 1. And he's like, where is this place?
He's like, where is Crescent Shore again? And now this is fun. Again, Kyle doesn't realize he could just tell his ring, look, take me to Crescent Shore, give me the directions, go.
Right, yeah.
And the ring would be able to do that. But again, he is still learning the functions and the vastness of the things he can do with his ring at this point.
But Donna's reaction was hilarious.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought that was...
Yeah. Well, it's like we were talking about earlier. You know, she is obviously the things that she has gone through, even though she's not that much older than Kyle, she's a lot more mature just because life has thrown so many things at her. And so, you know, she's obviously the more mature one in their relationship.
Yes, I agree with that. For sure.
So what was your take on the various things going on the island, kind of people jockeying against Aquaman's power here? What did you think of that?
That is a sort of, in every comic that I've read regarding Aquaman, that seems to be a staple of the situation. And I like it. I like the, you know, that there is that political undertone with the Aquaman book, without being ridiculously political in terms of, you know, getting into whatever at the time.
I should specify, this is Aquaman Volume 5.
Right. Yeah. So it's like they don't, you know what I mean? Like they don't, like it's political, but it doesn't. It's not preaching about whatever politics were going on in 1995, but it is political, and it makes sense that you think about Aquaman and the nature of him being, you know, part Atlantean, part human, and him being, you know, the de facto king, right? And how would people accept that? What's the, you know, that's going to cause some issue, and so I'm glad it's brought up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what I think is interesting is that when Kyle shows up on the scene, in terms of the superhero space, Aquaman is the more, you know, experienced and in the situation, more of the de facto leader, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and in this, obviously, number one, I really like this exchange, and I will say that I often don't like when a Green Lantern goes into another character's book and immediately they lose their ring somehow, and they stay in the book as window dressing. They get it back at the end, and it's like the writer doesn't want to deal with Green Lantern being powered up.
Yeah.
I don't think that was the case here, because, again, Kyle is still learning to use the ring, and Aquaman, he displayed knowledge of the ring that he had obviously gotten from working with Hal Jordan in the past, and the fact that he even tells Kyle, he was like, you know, I know who Green Lantern is, talking about Hal Jordan, and you're no Green Lantern. I mean, and I'm like, whoa. So he knows how to, like, hit the buttons with Kyle. He knows how to, you know, play those mind games.
And you know what the cool part about that exchange was, is that it kind of reminded me that we're still early in Kyle's career here.
Yeah.
And
he makes it's kind of misleading because he makes so many appearances in those first couple of years.
Yeah.
Because he's going in and out of these other books because he was so popular at the time.
I think Superman was probably which tracks, but Superman was probably the nicest to him.
Well, and again, that makes sense. But you know, we'll eventually get into the arc that was known as A Hero's Quest, where he goes around the various, and I love that story too.
I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah. And of course, Batman's a jerk to him. Surprise.
Well, Batman and Green Lantern have a history. And I can't wait to see. I just want to see DCU Green Lantern in the form of Guy. She's not, now there's three of them, so I gotta get my bearings of which one I'm talking about. I want to see DCU Guy have an exchange with whoever's going to play DCU Batman. And you know James Gunn's going to make sure that gets on screen at some point, because James Gunn, knows his comics beyond just the Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen and anything by Frank Miller. I'm not looking forward to that. But yeah, I can't wait till we get to that arc. This issue kind of caused me to remember that arc that you're talking about, where he goes to and I kept on telling, I'm like, I can't wait to get there. I can't wait to get there, because I remember that. I think that's probably where I started reading Kyle. Like, that was one of the first trades I bought.
And I will say this, Kyle, he does, in the battle with Aquaman, he does get the upper hand temporarily because he makes a couple of really, really cool constructs, including like a giant clam, and encases Aquaman in it. Yeah. And what Aquaman is able to do is he's able to use one of the sharks to surprise Kyle. Yeah. And when Kyle does that, then he uses the hook hand to pull his ring off. And what I really found interesting is that Aquaman knew that Kyle should have the ability to call his ring back to him, but he doesn't yet because he hasn't figured that part out yet.
Right.
Yeah.
But I even like the part where Kyle made the construct of the net. To trap. Yeah. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But what was also really well done about that fight was, through that, Aquaman gained respect for Kyle.
There is a mutual respect here, and the way it turns out is that the shark and the one is kind of dying of senility, and so he doesn't really need to be taken care of because nature is taking its course.
Reminds me of the political state of your two candidates, but I digress.
Yeah, let's not go there. Oh boy.
Sorry, I had to. You said senility.
That's a whole different.
And I'm thinking of those two guys, and I'm like, yeah, that's about sums it up, dude.
Yeah.
You need Kyle Rayner to run for president of the United States. That's what you need.
But yeah, you pointed it out that this was kind of a way of, establishing the two of them kind of feeling one another out as a hero, as heroes, and you see Kyle take that another step towards gaining the respect of a longtime Justice Leaguer, and Aquaman saying that, hey, maybe this guy does have what it takes. So,
and what was really fun too about the issue were the mentions by Kyle about Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Nuts, Jaws. That was fun because, again, those mentions about movies that exist in our lexicon of pop culture make even the most unrelatable scenarios relatable in a way, right? You know what I mean? So
right.
So I like those mentions when we get them.
Well, it gives you kind of a touchstone into reality. So.
And when he's going, the one thing that stands out was when he's underwater and he's looking for the shark. He's like, I don't have the benefit of an ominous soundtrack behind me to tell me that he's coming. Which then made me think of John Williams, because of course he did the Jaws score, I believe.
Yeah.
And then which made me think of Superman, because John Williams did the score for Superman. So it was that as well. But I like that. Like lines like that are really cool.
Yep.
But yeah.
Okay,
I enjoyed this issue.
Yeah. So now we're going to hop over back into the main title, and this is Green Lantern Volume 3, number 62.
I loved it. Spoiler alert, I absolutely loved it.
Well, we've got, again, Ron Mars writing the title. We've got Daryl Banks with some help from Joe St. Pierre, inks by Romeo Tanghal, and colors by Steve Matson. And I really like this issue because it opens up with Kyle and Donna jogging in New York.
Yeah.
And number one, and Donna is obviously super fit here, and Kyle is having problems trying to keep up with her. And here we go.
I'm not going to do it just yet. I'm waiting for the right time. But one thing I will say is I had a laugh with the whole exchange of Donna telling Kyle that he should really work out more.
Yeah.
And Kyle's response is, "What for? I got the ring."
But exactly.
Which is not gonna lie, that'd be my excuse too. It'd be like, what for?
Right.
I got the ring. But also, it made me think of an interview from back in the day with Michael Keaton, talking about playing Batman, where he talked about he was, working out. He was boxing against a punching bag, and Jack Nicholson walked in. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I'm working out." And he goes, "Why? Just let the suit do the work for you."
Yeah.
And and Michael Keaton never thought of that. So it reminded me about that interview.
Yeah. Well, and the story here, what happens is the two of them, there's an attempted mugging, and of course, Donna and Kyle easily fight off the muggers. Donna hand to hand, Kyle using his ring. But when it's over, she's like, you really do need to learn to handle yourself without the ring. You've got to be a lantern without the ring. We hear that a lot from characters like Kilowog, but again, Kilowog's dead at this point in the continuity.
He's been dead quite a bit. Currently deceased, but who knows how long that'll last.
And to illustrate this, Donna takes him down, very easily. And Kyle is like, well, this is not the worst thing to happen to me. And
again, I found myself agreeing with Kyle a lot in this issue. And
because he's on the ground, and again, she's on top of him with his arm hooked, and he's like, this is not the worst thing to ever happen.
I think that's the moment where he agrees, okay, I'll let you train me.
Yeah.
Which would totally be my reaction, because Donna Troy, in terms of, if there's a comic book version of me out there, Donna Troy is on the list. Right. And I know you were expecting that because you called it a mile away, but it had to be done. But also, there's a live action precedent because Titans had a version of Donna Troy, and she was most definitely on the list. I think it was Connor Leslie was her name. But I digress. Here's where I got really mad at Kyle, because you see, reading about these, like, if you're lucky enough to be dating a girl that wants to get into, let's say, your hobby and you're a comic book fan, do not let them read this issue, because there's a moment where Donna is talking about owing her a horse and carriage ride through New York, New York City. And Kyle, of course, via construct, whips it up.
Yeah, it's a perfect.
It's an amazing looking page, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. It just gorgeous pencil work there.
And then she immediately falls into his arms, and they start kissing, whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Wait. This is the moment when they have the smoochy face.
Yeah, right. Exactly, as you point out. But again, if you're involved with a girl and she wants to take up your hobby and start reading, this is going to make you look bad, because you can't do that.
You can't do that.
Whenever Superman takes Lois Lane flying and I'm watching, I'm like, thanks. You're making the rest of us look bad. We can't do that. Right? So that's my only, that's why I got upset with him. But, also the moment when they start kissing and they have to stop, because he has a deadline for some art project and she has to do
she has to do monitor duty for the Titans. And I'll tell you this too, even though it's a small panel, the panel after they kiss, when she's looking at him and she's like, that was nice. Yeah. You can see the emotion there. I mean, the complicated emotions that are going on with her, because obviously, she has reservations because of, her past, her marriage, but she obviously loves Kyle, or is starting to love Kyle at this point.
I like the relationship. I'm not a shipper by any means. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
My relationship with shipping. That's a mouthful. But I like the relationship. I really do.
Well, and it definitely made sense at the time. And the two of them, Mars really built that into something special. And then, if I remember correctly, he said that what happened was they needed her back in the Wonder Woman books. And so that's why all of a sudden he was just like, I love you. And then like, oh, no, I don't love you. Now I love Jade. Editorial things like that happen sometimes.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Yeah. So I do like the relationship, though, Kyle and Donna, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And this issue is a really good showcase of the talents of Daryl. Well, and not only Daryl's talent, but Ron's talent too, because I really like the way that the narrative moves. Okay, he's done with that situation with Donna. We've already seen an attempted mugging, and then on the way back to his apartment, he gets jumped by a villain who, at this point, we didn't know, and he forms a lot of really creative constructs here. One of them reminds me, well, he has a giant robotic hand. He does form like some kind of space blaster, but he also forms a construct that reminds me of like the Predacons.
That's a good call.
It reminds me of one of the Predacon Transformers, and this thing that he's fighting, it's half organic, it's half mechanized, and it just keeps coming. And no matter what Kyle makes, this thing breaks his constructs and just keeps moving forward. Even when Kyle makes, and this is the coolest construct, he makes a construct Green Lantern Doomsday. And man, did that look cool.
That did look cool. But actually, just to go back to the...
Go ahead.
The surprise attacker at that point. It reminded me of, the Spawn villain that's the gorilla, the mechanized gorilla. It reminded me of that.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I don't know if it's Overkill. It's not Overkill. It's something, Cygor or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think it's Cygor. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what.
Well, I remember when I first read this issue, I thought, because all of this villain would say. By the way, this villain's name is Duality, and it's his only appearance as far as I know. I thought that it was a cyborg who had his wires scrambled, and the reason we saw the organic part of him is that that had been peeled away on the other side, and that this was some kind of robot. We found out in a few panels, a few pages, that that's not quite the case.
Right.
So this thing is able to knock Kyle out, and then it takes him back to his apartment, strangely enough. And who is waiting for him at his apartment? Ganthet.
We should have known back then that there was something fishy about him. We didn't until later on. But Ganthet is... and here we get a little bit of background information on more about why Kyle was chosen.
Right. Well, and so Kyle... thinks, okay, well, Ganthet's here. And we find that, Ganthet, that he had to take some time to reconstitute himself after his initial meeting with Kyle because he was out of energy. And so he picks Kyle back up here. Duality, we see, is just an energy construct.
Yeah.
So Ganthet, dissolves him here in the air. The construct goes away. And then Ganthet reveals this secret. He was like, I've been monitoring you all this time, and I don't think you're worthy of the ring, so I'm back to take the ring away. So that was a twist, and I remember seeing that, and I was like, wow,
That's not very... I mean, listen, you made your choice, now you gotta...
And he's like, give the ring over, and Kyle's like, no, I have earned this ring. And at that, from Kyle's vantage point, not only from just his title, but all the other crossovers. He's been in a couple of events at this point.
Right, yeah.
He's fought some major battles. He hasn't always done well. He's obviously still learning, but he's like, no, this ring is mine. I have earned it.
And the fact that he says he's earned it, it's kind of meta in terms of his own existence, just because. If you look at how popular Kyle became, given where he started, is taking over the mantle of Green Lantern from Hal. It wasn't fans had a problem with the idea of not Hal, somebody other than Hal, being a Green Lantern back in the day, and the fact that he became that popular in spite of that backlash. Is earning is in a way earning his place as a Green Lantern, right?
Well, yeah, that you can read a lot of his comments and a lot of the conflict between Kyle and whether it's other former Green Lanterns that he happens to meet or Justice League members or villains or whatever. You can kind of read into that kind of a meta element of Kyle earning his place in the comic book fandom because there were a lot of fans that they didn't want to accept anybody but Hal Jordan as Green Lantern. But Kyle brought in a lot of new readers, people who weren't reading Green Lantern before. And I think DC realized, because again, in the early 90s, the reason why they tried a lot of these events and a lot of these gimmicks is because they were losing out to a lot of, comics like from Image Comics at the time.
Yeah.
That's what was capturing people's imagination. That's why they tried a new Green Lantern here, is because the books before that, before issue number 48, they weren't selling well.
Right.
However, that doesn't mean that they throw the baby out with the bathwater, because who should appear in the doorway when Ganthet says, "Give me the ring," and Kyle says, "No, it's mine," and we see a foot say, "Actually," and then it pans up. We see the opposite view. Someone says, "It's mine and I want it back." And that is Hal Jordan.
Right.
Yeah. And that's where the issue ends. And it says, "Parallax View, the resurrection of Hal Jordan."
Yeah.
I remember the first time I read that and I was like, uh-oh. As JR would say, business is about to pick up.
Yeah, it's going to be a swap. Based on the cover for the next issue in my digital edition, it's going to be a slobber knocker, folks. Based on the cover.
And it was. We're going to see a lot of familiar faces over the next couple of issues. So,
so how do you want to, because we've done the 3 issues, how do you want to, you still want to rate it as our usual, as a whole kind of thing?
We could do, okay, I'll tell you my opinion of the Damage issue. I'm going to say a 4. I really like the writing. I didn't like the art in every place, especially the way Kyle's mask was drawn in some places.
Yeah.
Plus, there wasn't a lot of construct, which is fine because it wasn't that type of book.
Sure.
The Aquaman book, again, I really like the interplay between Kyle and Aquaman. The art was a little minimalist, so I'm going to give that also a 4. Green Lantern number 62, I'm going to give it an absolute 5 because there was so much to like in this. So many twists and turns. So
So the Aquaman issue, I'll give a 4.5 for story because I like the dynamic between Kyle and Arthur, and all the Jaws references were funny, and so 4.5 for writing and a 4 for the art. And then for the Green Lantern issue, it's a 5 and for writing and a 5 for art. There was one splash panel or splash page of Kyle flying through New York City that was just spectacular. Anytime Darryl Banks draws Kyle flying, it's a great image. And then obviously the horse and carriage was so detailed and well drawn. So it's a 5 and 5 for both story and art for that. Yeah. But you know what my big takeaway from going through this and rereading Kyle's adventures is, as I said, my brief sort of introduction to Kyle before Rebirth, because as you know, that's when I really got kickstarted, was the storyline that we haven't gotten to yet, where he basically runs the gauntlet of meeting all the Justice League members. So that was really my first foray into Kyle and Green Lantern. So I missed all this on first go around. So rereading this is kind of like, it's new to me, even though it's, what are we, 2 decades removed from it?
Almost 3 decades now.
Jeez, damn old.
This was 1995, so 29 years ago.
It's goddamn depressing, is what it is. Like my hair is gonna start going the way of Hal Jordan.
The color of my beard, you can say it.
No, but like Side story. So I was doing my hair the other morning, and before you put gel in it and all that jazz, it's dry and early in the morning. And as I'm about to wet it and put some gel in it and whatnot, don't I scratch my head or something, and in my temple, I'm like, wait, what is that? And I'm starting to see gray, and I'm like, oh crap!
Yeah.
Like I'm basically turning into Hal Jordan during the Parallax era, or on the Marvel
the
side,
temples. Yeah,
or on the Marvel side, Mr. Fantastic, minus his intelligence. So I'm like, I don't know if I like this trend, but I know who I believe, and it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. You're getting sued as soon as I get enough gray hairs. But I digress. But no, it's like, even though it's almost 3 decades removed from being new, a lot of this, until we get to that point, is new to me, which I'm loving.
And even though I've read this so many times, because I go back and read this run yearly, at least, I still find new things about it, and it really reminds me of just how DC was able to capture lightning in a bottle with Daryl Banks and Ron Mars at the time, with them really, coming together and forming something that really caught the comic book world's attention at the time. And this was something that it was only supposed to be about a year, the original plan. And Kyle got so popular that he lasted as the titular Green Lantern for 10 years.
Yeah.
And he's still around. So
yeah, I just wish they'd do more with him. I mean, he's gotten more play recently.
Yeah. But well, this is his 30th year as the titular Green Lantern. Remember, he showed up, issue 48 was at the very end of 93. 1994 was when he took over as Green Lantern. So I'm expecting something later this year to kind of commemorate that.
When did he take over? Do you remember the month he took over?
It was early in 1994. I want to say it was like January. It was very early.
I mean, this is kind of a stupid question, because I know what your answer is going to be. How excited would you be if, not even an ongoing, but say a 5 or 6 issue miniseries reuniting Ron Mars and Daryl Banks on Kyle as Green Lantern? Because I know we got it for like an issue. Wasn't it like an issue, some kind of Green Lantern special issue?
Yeah.
Or it was like a 1-page story or something like that, which was pretty cool. But I'm talking about like a miniseries. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah. I would love come back and write a 6-issue mini with, and I would love for Kyle to be paired with Joe Mullane as a partner for an issue, or for an arc. But if they did like a 6-issue mini, I would want all of the variant covers, and I would take him to cons and get him autographed. So
I really hope we get to a stage, and maybe that'll come when Lanterns hits the screen, where there can be more. Like, I know we've been lucky, and we had, Guy Gardner Guy Gardner, Alan Scott, for God's sake.
Yeah.
We had the miniseries. We had the Jon Stewart maxi series. I got one or 2 issues left, which we will cover, from Philip Kennedy Johnson.
Speaking of, go ahead and finish your thought, and I want to say something after you finish what you have to say.
So we've gotten that. We've been lucky. We have Jeremy Adams on the monthly.
Mm-hmm.
But I would hopefully, when Lanterns comes out, maybe we get another book or 2 from DC. That's another ongoing. I'm not saying, listen, we don't need to go back to the Jeff Johns era, which I would love, where we have 5 or 6 Green Lantern ongoings. I'd love that. But I'm not saying we have to go back to that. But I love at least one more Green Lantern centered book that is in essence an anthology, where you can get multiple stories in one book each month, featuring different Green Lanterns outside of Hal Jordan. I think that would be I think everybody would be happy if they did something like that.
I think just about every Green Lantern fan, regardless of who your favorite is, if you talk about a revival of Green Lantern Quarterly, everybody is in favor of that. The
Yeah,
idea
but
of
it's just
kind of rotating lanterns and rotating
and,
stories.
and the beauty of it is, okay, you have 2 books, so it's not oversaturating the market, right? And with a fandom that I think you and I being part of this fandom, we can say that with some level of authority. That is very hard to please.
Yeah. Yes.
Again, and it is a knock, but it isn't, because we're part of this, so it is what it is. But I think a book like that would please everybody.
Yeah, and a lot of people too. And I've thought about this too. I would love to see a Green Lantern Corps miniseries that it doesn't have to have humans in it. Give us some of the alien lanterns working
Sure.
together for whatever reason, you know?
Yeah, the resurrection of Kilowog. Because we know that's coming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but
As sure as I'll get excited in October for another disappointing leaf season, I'm pretty sure Kilowog's coming back. So,
That's right.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were gonna mention something.
Last Saturday, I got to meet finally face to face someone whom we have had on this podcast before, and that was Philip Kennedy Johnson. And it was an honor to meet him, and he was so nice and so engaging, and signed a number of Green Lantern collectibles that I will be showcasing on my YouTube channel. That is Emerald Enthusiast. So make sure you subscribe, and you'll get to see those up close in the near future.
Love Philip Kennedy Johnson. He's great. His Superman run was an all-timer, and his War Journal story is just emotionally supercharged, and I love it. And we're obviously going to cover, the last few issues as it ends. But I really hope that he does more in the Green Lantern space at some point. But even I'm curious to know what he's doing, what his next thing, because I know he's got to create her own thing. But I'm curious, though. I hope he's got more DC work left in him.
Yeah. Well, and I thanked him for what he's done for John Stewart, because up until a couple years ago, John Stewart, as popular as he was, mainly due to the Justice League
cartoon. From the cartoon.
That's he was the guy from the cartoon.
That was my quote when I first,
Again, they can't reprint a lot of Mosaic, which was his most, centric story. Yeah, exactly. We know why that is. For reasons, yeah. But we know why that is.
Yeah.
But now we have a story from Jeff Thorne. Now we have a story from Philip Kennedy Johnson. So we have a couple of John Stewart comic touchstones for fans.
Yeah, did you kind of, because I know you can get very inquisitive with Green Lantern writers and artists. Did you kind of sort of get him to drop some hints at what his next potential DC thing could be?
He did not mention DC. I did pick up the first issue of his book, Crocodile Black.
Okay.
He did say, I don't think he can say legally now. I said the book is ending at issue 12, right? And again, I'm talking about Green Lantern War Journal. And he said something along the lines of sort of. So I don't know if that has something to do with the upcoming crossover event, but it sounds like there's more to come beyond what was just the original planned run.
Yeah, he's talked about having some Kyle stories in him. So I'd like to see him do those. Selfishly, I'd also like to see him have a run at Batman and see what he could do with Batman, given what he did with Superman. And I know he likes Batman because he said as much on our show, and that he'd want to do something with Batman. So, like I said, I'm loving his Hulk run, which I do have to get caught up on, because I'm woefully behind. Again, there's so many good comics that I'm woefully behind on Hulk, but I need to catch up. And maybe we'll do a catch-up roundup here on this show at some point, on the Marvel, not on this show, but on the Marvel show that is part of this network.
Yeah.
And, maybe if he wants, we can get him back after War Journal to talk more Lanterns with us, if he's open to that. I mean, I'll leave you to do that and broach the conversation, because you're good at that. So hopefully we can have him back for the, what would that be, his third time, right? The hat
Third
trick
appearance,
appearance.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're gonna get him on for the hat trick appearance. It'll be nice. Once War Journal wraps up. But yeah, he's a great guy. He's been nothing but wonderful to us. Both times he's come on the show. So like I said, I hope that we hear some announcements about him doing some more stuff with DC, Lanterns or otherwise. So let's hope we hear that. I will say this, Donnie. There is going to be some interesting times, afoot in terms of the comics, especially with San Diego Comic-Con coming up, because post what is this event called? Absolute Power.
Yes, Absolute Power.
Post Absolute Power, which we will probably review the 4-issue thing once it's complete. We'll do a review of that. But post Absolute Power, some of the books' creative teams are staying the same. Some are changing. I think Jeremy Adams will probably still be on Green Lantern, is my guess, which I hope he is. And I hope he's on for as long as Jeff Johns was, personally. That's just my hope. So I don't think that's changing. But there is, and here's a little bit of rumor, and it might pertain to Green Lantern, it might not. But I keep reading on, I think Bleeding Cool is the main proponent of this. They're usually reliable with their print comic book news. Their live action stuff is hit or miss, but their print stuff is usually pretty on point. And they are convinced that at Comic-Con we're going to hear about a line of comics that is going to be called Absolute Comics or something, Absolute DC, something along those lines, that is essentially the Ultimate Universe. You know how Marvel has an Ultimate Universe?
Oh, yeah, right.
This will be the Ultimate Universe for DC. And we'll have, new takes and new continuities for DC's greatest heroes.
So more Green Lantern books for me to collect.
So we're obviously going to have more Batman, another Batman title. And by the way, this imprint is supposedly going to be head up by Scott Snyder. Like, he's going to be the mastermind behind it all. So we're going to have, obviously, another Batman book, another Superman book, another Wonder Woman book. I'm pretty much going to say that I'm almost guaranteed that we're going to have another Green Lantern book. Who will be ready in that? Who knows? But so keep a lookout, because when Comic-Con comes, this network is going to be covering the comic news and whatever live action news comes out of Comic-Con, whether it be the Marvel side of the equation, the DC side of the equation. We're going to cover it all, so stay tuned. But interesting things are coming. I can assure you of that. But Donnie, it's always a joy to spend an afternoon talking, whether it be Marvel or DC, in this case Green Lantern, with you, because it takes away from the nonsense of the real world that involves the Italian national team losing terribly, the Leafs pissing themselves on a regular basis, nonsense regarding political debates. It takes away from all that stuff and just provides an hour or two of fun and enjoyment for me,
and
for you.
That's what it's supposed to be.
And hopefully the listeners and viewers. But the fun doesn't have to stop, because they can find both of us on social media. Donnie, where do they track you down?
You can find me on Twitter, TikTok, or YouTube as The Emerald Enthusiast. Let's talk comics. Let's talk collectibles. Let's talk Green Lantern.
You can find me at Adam_DeesFan on Twitter. I am on Threads. I don't know what my handle is on there, but I'm there. I'll get that sorted out for the next episode, folks. I'm there. Listen, I'm there because that's James Gunn's predominant social media that he favors. That's where he drops a lot of stuff. I'm here for all that. But listen, if you find me on there and we're friends on there, I'll talk to you on there too. As long as you don't hashtag me nonsense about restoring this, that, and the other. But yeah, but I am on Twitter at Adam_LeafFan. We also have a Facebook group, which is going to be in the description below. Click that. I will add you, and we can continue the conversation there if you so choose. But remember, Kyle Rayner is the Green Lantern forever. From his first run in the park with Don and Troy to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everyone.